discussed in there. So no, there won't be a direct study that will prove, superstition is now proven through this measurable, quantifiable data. That's not going to be there. Yeah. But I will say, if you do have a true scientific mind, you'll definitely test it. You step on a crack, you're breaking mama's back. Okay, we now breaking mirrors. Um, so is superstition a later term to describe what is misunderstood science or what was once understood? All right, that is a question that I implore people to, you know, really investigate, embark on a journey to see, okay, why did they say this? Because if something became superstitious, it was repeatable, right? And you can say folklore, fake, or is there science there, right? Could there be, let's say a black cat crossing paths? Could there be this is me doing a quick quantifiable, I'm gonna keep it short. Uh, the magnetic field of this particular pigment of this cat can generate this particular force that can cause these events, you know what I'm saying, that get absorbed into the other. And I'm saying, and I'm doing a quick, what they will have to try to quantify. And so I'm giving an example on what we might consider something, just a belief or something made up. There is a undescribable science there. And that's challenging for me to try to quantify. A lot of people want to talk, so I'll stop there. So yes, I do believe in support.
All right, go ahead, Napa. Thank you.
It's a lot. Trying to think. I mean, I've heard conviction from all sorts of angles. Y'all know that I grew up in a mostly Islamic background, so I've heard from people, my father, friends, brothers. If you make salat 5 times a day, the results are just magnificent. And look at the results of my prayer. Look at the results. Oh, when I made hijrah and I made salat every day, these blessings came to me. Like, there's all sorts of fantastical stories as long as one kept to their religious deeds. And I think that it's like a mixture of like the power of the mind and also a mixture of consistency. So if you continue to do something, you see results, a feedback loop of that thing, it might have some application, or it might just be just a mechanism that might it's not really as superstitious as people might think it is. Now, when it comes to like supernatural abilities like telekinesis and telepathy, astral projection, I've read a lot about that. I know that the government has experience with that. There's all kind of programs for that. So maybe there's something to it. It was stopped because there wasn't repeatable evidence of this, but there was enough evidence, suspicion of it, that they ran programs for it. So I'm not saying that's not real, but when it comes to every superstitious ideology or divination practice or meditation practice, I just think it's really just power of the mind, visualization, and action after you do these visualization rituals. That's all that it is. And if that's supernatural, then you can call it. I don't think it is, though. I just see repetition. But I'm done. Go ahead.
Issa, are you back?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry.
Oh, okay. That's
The
okay.
conversation kind of evolved from what I was going to say before, but that's fine. So when I think about these like ancient myths, religions, superstitions, all of these things, I think that there is some science to it. There is some truth to it. Even when it comes to Yogi's example of the black cat crossing the road, it was the repetition of this black cat. I don't think it was just this one black cat that crossed the road and then something happened and then everybody decided.
Sorry, y'all. Somebody sent me a PK request and I accepted it and it kicked y'all off the panel.
It say
Please
I'm
come
still
back up.
here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it kicks off the last three people. So
Oh,
it kicked Issa off right when she was talking. Fusion, you could come back up. And then who else was up here?
Yogi.
I was
Yeah.
about
Yogi.
to say the shadow ban is real today.
No, it's these stupid PKs. I meant to decline it and I clicked the accept button, but it was, I don't know. Go ahead, Issa.
The repetition of the black hat, right? So I feel like that we're underestimating how many thousands of years that the Homo sapien human people were able to collect this information to be able to create it into a religion and these spiritual beings and be able to actually, like, these are the same people that were creating these stories that's talking about different attributes and archetypes that we still deal with today. It took a lot of information for these people to come up with this stuff. So yes, I absolutely believe that it's built in some type of science, it's built in some type of psychology, it's built in all of these things. I think that the mistake that we make today is believing that every piece of it is true and not using our own discernment and the information that we have today and the information that we're still gaining today to be able to use their mythology as a stepping stool for our information. That's it.
All right, thank you, Issa. Skinny head, go ahead. Let that rhymed.
All right. Now, one of my favorite ways to disprove the Bible was burning bush, the man getting swallowed by a whale in the flood story, right? And I'm still like, yeah, floods happen, but you ain't putting all the animals in the world on the boat. Nobody gonna trick me to that unless science come up with like some spatial storage device to where like you can put it's a universe within a small space or something like that. And then once I see that science, then I may believe all of these animals was on one boat. But I saw an experiment. I don't know if everybody else saw it. Anybody else seen this? It's a science experiment, cold flames. And when I seen that, I'm like, if I'm being honest, that could give a tiny bit room to the burning bush. Because there's one thing I would be like, if we could, one little thing I used to say to myself was, if it could be done in a lab, it can happen natural. It could just happen by coincidence, circumstance, naturally. Some stuff, it was possible. It was possible for it to. And say if we could make it happen, most of the time it looked like it's a possible way nature can do it. So I was on this little route, and then I seen the fire, and I'm like, okay, let me give a little bit of weight. Maybe I gotta change up some of my theories. And this was before I saw the orb. And before I saw the orb, I even like all the crazy people. I'm like, a crazy person can still witness a murder. And they could know what happened. But then we not wanting to take their story strictly off because we know they crazy or they homeless or they make bad decisions in their life. And that was just one thing. Like that was just one thing. I think I'm gonna end there. But before I end, if you can still hear Napa, any of these topics, whether it's science, religion, evolution, anything you're dealing with, whether you're trying to believe in it or debunk it, you gotta figure it out on your own. You can't go off of what people saying. Now, you may have to take in some people's testimonies and hear what people saying about the topic to kind of help steer you in your own research. But any topic you're dealing with, especially this supernatural one, you can't go off of what other people saying, because human beings is out here lying, making stuff up. They not that reliable, and you know that. So you got to go, if you, to understand any topic, you have to go on the limb to study it and figure it out yourself. Damn near. That's all I can say. But this ain't nothing you could walk out and be like, all right, ghosts pop up. You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to that part, I'm with you on I'm telling you, I was exactly where you was at. Like and it's like any topic, like a person going, any paradigm, a person only gonna be able to think in a paradigm unless they make the choice to try to learn something outside of it. That's all in there.
All right, thank you, Skinny Head. Oh, I'm muted. My bad, y'all. Fusion was next, and then Cosmics after him, then Issa, then Napa. Peace, God, energy. Hope you're well. Having a great day on purpose.
All right, hey Unity. What's up, everybody?
Hey,
Real
hey.
quick. So it is a balance to it, though. So it's kind of 2 points I have. So there's the value in, even in the divination and even in meditation, and I'm not going to consider that supernatural. I consider those things natural. But when it comes to the scientific inquiry, there's the method is there for a reason. So we don't actually, some things may not need to go into a scientific space, because then you're looking for a yes or no. Like if you say, did this thing happen anecdotally, it may be correct. If you say, did this thing happen scientifically, then that means that you have to have been able to put that thing through the scientific method. Like you would have had to have tested it and things like that. So some things that you can't test stay in the inconclusive space, because you don't necessarily give an answer of, yes, this is the case, when it hasn't been proven that that's the case, because it can have dire coincidences scientifically. Because when you're doing something scientifically, you're looking to come to a conclusion that you can use functionally in the world. So kind of like the case with the orb. So if the anecdotal evidence was that someone saw an orb, and then the question is asked, well, what was it? And even the person who saw the orb says, I don't know, then we have to find a way to further test that, or to go deeper into it before coming to a conclusion of saying that orb was this. Even if we take in the data of a person saw an orb, we can take that into the physical scientific data. You can't actually throw that out, even though it's technically anecdotal, but it's just not the conclusion of the scientific method. It's part of it. So it hasn't been concluded, it hasn't been peer reviewed, and whatever results we come up with, we haven't all checked all that to where you say yes 100% to that question scientifically. But there's the balance to it in relation to, like, our spiritualities and divinations having no purpose, whether it's scientifically proven or not. Kind of like what Cosmic was talking about. He may not be able to scientifically prove certain things he's written, but they don't necessarily have to be. Some of them have a certain function and purpose that can help in life. Like, even if, I don't know if Cosmic is, if you're familiar with like throwing obi in Yoruba tradition, or even in Ifa and different traditions, even the math in them are interesting, even to mathematicians. Like the fact that they work in 8 a lot, and binary code is in 8 and things like that. These things are true. So there's cool stuff in there, but these are traditions left by ancestors to like have a functional purpose. So there's certain things that you can do, like in even in divination, to be honest. There is a functional purpose to where if you can't make a decision, let's say it doesn't matter whether it's actually telling you anything. But if you can't make a decision in life, when a bunch of times come up that you need to make a decision, and some of those times are when if you don't make a decision or you procrastinate on that decision, that decision gets made for you. So you can use divination even in that situation to at least push you forward to making a decision, like almost like flipping a coin. And it's not necessarily the answer for the coin that the coin gives you, but you also, after you get the answer, you know more about how you feel about the decision because the coin made the decision for you. So you can do that even in the short form version of Ifa and throwing Obi, which is also is cool in the numbers and stuff. It coincides. It's a set of 4 that results in 5 answers. So it's and those answers go from yes, they go from hell yeah to hell no to yes, regular no, very much yes, and very much don't even try that shit answer. And one in between that's a if you get this answer, throw it again. It's a non-answer, really. So there are things and there are functional things that we relate to as supernatural. That's not supernatural. That's natural. So there are natural things that we refer to as supernatural that still, even though they may not be able to be proven, or at least they haven't yet been tested scientifically. And if someone wants to put that testing together, there are ways that can be done. It'll take a while, but even regardless of the science in relation to some things, they still have a functional usage in our lives.
Thank you, Fusion. I appreciate that. Go ahead, Cosmic. You're next on the list.
You know, in reference to like spirituality, I've come to realize like it's really very difficult to really get like repeatable, quantifiable experiences. Like the discussion, like especially sensory experiences, right? You know, like I meditated for this many hours and I was exposed to this level of reality, right? You really can't like, let's just say I was meditating for 100 hours and then I learned how to leave my body, right? But that's my experience. What you'll notice is there's a place called Vipassana, right? Vipassana, you can go to dhamma.org. It's 10 days of meditation, 10 hours a day. It's free, technically. I did it, it was free, right? And then, so, you know, I did over 100 and something hours of meditation, right? But then when I was, when talking to everybody, we had a certain level that was kind of like the same where everybody would see, this was during the like a little bit after 9/11. Everybody was having this experience of the government like a visualization of the government coming in and shooting us because we were meditators. It was kind of weird, like mass psychosis. But beyond that, you didn't, like, as far as the other sensory experiences, seeing visions, my conversation about leaving the body, that was on me. Like, I can't really, nobody else had that experience, right? Everybody, it seems as if though, and I'm trying to say that because it seems as if though, like, we can say, sit and meditate, and there will be a certain level of repeatable experience and benefits that you will receive. But then when it comes to like something else, like the extra sensory stuff, you know, you don't really know what's gonna occur. And then people have said that all depends upon the evolution of the soul, the age of the soul, the needs of, there's a lot of different reasons people say, which is really hard to verify. You can't really verify like your God self didn't think it was time. How are you going to verify that statement? You can't. You know, so it's really hard, but you know, I've tried, at least when I speak, to give people something that they can put into practice that they can see works on a repeatable level. You know, like when I do talk about, you know, I do talk about meditation, I talk about fasting, I talk about studying, observing patterns, because the one thing about nature and the universe is its patterns. When the brother was talking about Ifa is patterns, you know, OB is patterns. All of these things are patterns. The energy, when you're dealing with energy expresses itself through repetition, through duplication, right? Even on the fundamental, like I guess quarks and all these other things, like even talking about the Fibonacci sequence is duplication of energy, duplication of itself. So it's patterns, you know. And so I guess that's what I was trying to. I think that, but it's really difficult to get somebody to have the same experience. Like I've taken people when I go to the monastery and meditate for months or whatever. I've taken people there with me, and they have a completely different understanding. They don't get the same thing. Nobody gets the same thing, which is interesting. There's certain things that you can do that's repeatable. Like we can, like 15 of us, you know, 7 brothers drumming, 7 sisters dancing. We can get together, we can perform a ritual. I can guarantee you vibrations are going to happen. People are going to start feeling the vibe. Some sisters may go into trance, brothers may go into trance, but what that trance happens, that's almost an African science, right? But then what happens after that, what's verifiable, is something else really happening? Or are you just tripping in the way in which you're speaking? You know, that you can't really quantify what happens after that. Like I can show you a method of going into trance or going into an altered state of consciousness or an altered state, but like do we have a way to like quantify and study a person's state continuously? It's kind of hard. They've been able to do that with meditators back in the day. I think there was a book written, the Tao of something, where they hooked all these electrodes up to the brain of meditators and so on and so forth. They're able to do that. But when it comes to somebody going into trance with African spirituality, that's a little bit harder to quantify. Yeah, I think I'm gonna land right there.
All right, thank you, Cosmic. Issa, go ahead, Issa.
Yeah, I agree with Cosmic is saying. And I also agree with what Fusion is saying. For the most part, spirituality is a single journey. Like there's no way to quantify between two different people to make the scientific method be applicable in this realm of the conversation. I think that a lot of the time where the disagreements come in at is when we are trying to mix the two, when in all reality, yes, they both can live in the same realm because it's all human activity. This is at least, especially when it comes to the spirituality part of it, right? We're talking about, at least from how I understand and what my meditation has brought to me, it brought in an understanding of who I was and going into a trance into my emotions, into my feelings, into my connection with the earth and the things that are around me. It has absolutely nothing to do with other people, even though other people are joining into their own trance in the same space that I'm in. So it's just a tricky situation. And when you kind of get into the science of it all, right, and you start to figure out where these like spiritual practices, where they start to evolve, at what state of the brain are animals able to kind of go into these spiritual thought patterns and seeing these spiral, basically what I'm trying to say is seeing the sacred geometry within nature. Like what part of the human evolution did we start to get those things? And once you start to pinpoint things, you start to understand, like, yeah, a lot of the reason why spirituality can't be explained in a complete way for everybody else to get everybody's journey is because in the deepest sense, it's all a part of our own imagination. It's all a part of our own emotional journey. Wherever we're at is what we're going to manifest in whatever trance we are in. That's why it made so much sense when you said after 9/11, everybody had this, feeling of the government coming to get us, because it was all these conspiracy theories. Was America a part of it? Are they going to do it again? This never happened, especially in our, like, that's a lot of anxiety to sit and think on, or to sit and meditate on, and that comes out. So I'm gonna just land my plane with this. Like, I feel like as long as we're trying to constantly put science and the spirituality into the same frame, we're going to continue to have these back and forth kind of conversations, because there's so much that the scientific method can't explain. And that's the language of science. Like, if you can't explain it within the scientific method, or it leaves it so many things up to chance. So that's it.
All right, thank you, Issa. Go ahead, Skinny Head.
Man, y'all hitting on some deep points, and I'm grateful for this conversation. We getting so deep into it, because I'll be trying to strike this up a little bit sometimes, and it kind of get thrown off where I'm trying to go. Like, people think I'll be just trying to create arguments, like, but I'm actually trying to stop a lot of arguments, because, like she said, these are science and spirituality. They two different topics. Like, and science is trying to, like, have proof and exact measurements and stuff like that. But I even think sometimes when I be honest, when I'm with my speaking with my spiritual friends, and I'll be honest about science and math, even if, like, somebody can recreate an experiment, they don't sometimes understand everything that's happening. Or with the math, it don't sometimes be completely exact. It's like a great estimation most of the time. Like, because I don't, like, for one extreme stupid example, I don't never seen it in the I have never seen an instrument that could measure how many atoms is in an object down to the exact amount. And even sometimes some things is almost impossible to exactly measure, because it may be in the process of decaying or something like that. So to capture that snapshot and all this different stuff, is some stuff it may be hard to be completely exact about. And that's something that the spirituality kind of have in common. And and even a relation to the personal journey part. They say learn about God and all that, in your relationship with God is a personal thing. What I'm learning with this research stuff and understanding life and reality and truth and being able to handle some of these conversations, we got to be able to, like, see our own personal, we got to be able to get over ourselves. Sometimes we don't challenge our own information where we at. And that's where, because we can get comfortable, we can learn so much, and then that alone can make us miss something, because we like, what, all this shit I know, all the years I lived, I should have been saying that, or been understood that, or so some could easily go under our noses a lot of time.
He got a phone call. I'll give him a second. It might be a minute. Skinny Head, I'm gonna go ahead and move the Cosmic.
All right.
Oh, okay.
When he comes back, I'll chill out. But you know, this conversation. Okay, so I no doubt I study ancient Egypt. Um, from honestly daily. You know, African spirituality, African ways of being is my thing. Um, but and the one thing I always used to wonder though, this conversation is bringing me to this. When you study the Egyptian teachings, it's not like the Indian teachings, right? More the Egyptian teachings are more focused around good society, being a good character, you know, having good character, so to speak, or being how to be a good statesman, right? That's what you get with the written Egyptian literature. But but we know, or I know, or then I'm under of the understanding that you know Egyptian also had a deep understanding of metaphysics, right? And so, but then that's all I could say. I can read it and then input and then do a mergence of Indian spirituality with Egyptian understanding. But in truth, the majority of Egyptian writings is all about, you know, family, culture, and in state stability. And so then it brings to into like they focus more on that than the individual spiritual experience, which was discussed earlier. Like spirituality is an individual experience, but we live as humans, we have to live in community. So what's the best way to live in community but still honor spirituality? One of the best ways is to advocate for being an upright and just man and woman, you know, living by good character. It's called Iwe Pele or something like that in the African tradition. And then good character will give you more spiritual power than any meditative experience or anything else. You know, because that will be your protection both and spiritually, they would say both spiritually and socially by having good character, good reputation, so on and so forth. Because I think because all of this has to be, and this is the power I think of the Abrahamics, because they talk about they don't focus their focus of spirituality is what they consider good character in service of the divine, right? But when we do spirituality on our end, we understand the individuality of spirituality, but we also need to somehow push that to the development of community, nation, and state. How do we do that? Well, one of the ways in which the Africans have, you know, come up with that solution is to focus on being a good character, or being aku keperu, a reborn, or a being a renewed being of divine light. You know, a shepsu, not a living shepsu or aku. And so I think, you know, looking at all of this, like how do we translate? Like we know that meditation is good. You know, we know that understanding health is good, but how does that translate into the great, making that passed down traditions? How does that translate into culture? And then the other thing I want to say is there's something about human consciousness where I term it now like the Bronze Age mentality, right? There's an aspect of the undeveloped, uncritical mind that gravitates towards myth, you know, and as we're talking as well as the individual spirituality, like there are people that have these spiritual experiences, but want to influence you with their personal experience. You know, like for instance, you know, you go to a space and someone says, I had a dream about you. Someone told me this, I got this message for you. And that's supposed to have some impact on our life, right? But take that to a greater, you know, to a greater cause. You know, what something I recently dealt with in Africa. Some lady had a dream about the ancestors, and we had to do a big ritual on it, right? And I was trapped in that space because according to their cultural tradition, that was as real as like, you know, anything else. But I'm looking at how myth is still impacts consciousness, and especially impacts the consciousness of uncritical minds. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a big thing. Like people that are not trained to think critically are highly impacted by myth. You know, like people I run into, man, last year I was in Arkansas, I was in the Whole Foods in Little Rock, and I was having a conversation with this European over in the the aromatherapy type of section, right? And then in the summertime, I dress in monastic garb, so I'm in all purple. My hair is out, so people always gravitate towards me and speaking spiritual conversations. This dude started talking to me about Bigfoot, right? And he started talking to me, and I'm listening to this man speak, and he's telling me that Bigfoot exists, and the reason people can't see him is because all he has to do is turn to the side, and he becomes invisible. And I'm watching this grown ass man telling me this, and I'm like, but, and then I'm running, and then I bring that example up to say I run into a lot of people that have these type of conversations where they talk about these mythological beings, they talk about these experiences they've had, and it's supposed to be some sort of if they're supposed to have some sort of influence on you, or you might see them as a more spiritual being or so on. And that, to me, that's a mythological part of the mind. Like, I think I call it the Bronze Age mind. There's some part of our mind that still wants to give power to these supernatural beings. And I'm gonna land right here because I've been talking a while.
Thank you, Cosmic. Okay, who's next? Fusion. You're next. Go ahead.
Okay. So in relation to the meditation, real quick, just for the testing aspect of what we're calling supernatural, because we kind of know, like, meditation is a good one to go into if we are going to go into something scientifically and try to prove, if we're compelled to try to prove certain things, not that are myth, but like certain practices. So there's a difference between mythologies and like spiritual practices that you actually do that have a result in the brain and a result in your life. So there is a meditation study that was done in the 90s. I think it was in DC, but there was the largest group meditation study that I can think of. And this can be repeated. So it's if we can get the repeatable, the discipline to repeat the actions, like the scientific method would require, and then come to a conclusion, then it could be done to a heavy degree. But even in that particular study, even it being done that one time on that one day, and I think it was thousands of people, and not like 100,000, and let's say like 3 or 4,000 people to meditate it all at once. And they also took the FBI and police and crime statistics at the same time. And the crime rate in Washington, D.C. dropped by, I think, at least 20% for a specific time period. And then they did the numbers all on how that would affect if you take those numbers and did it across the country over long terms, and how much it would reduce crime. So that's been studied to a degree. It just hasn't been repeated and repeated. But in that one specific testing, there was a result that actually came out that the meditation, or at least where you can correlate the meditation and the drop in crime rate. And that's a 20% drop in crime rate is a heavy drop. So you can definitely say scientifically, if you look at that, the 20% drop in crime rate isn't just arbitrary because the number is too large. And that the meditation of the people had an effect on the crime rate, but the way that it would have the effect on the crime rate, it could have been that half the criminal, that 20% of the criminals were meditating at the time and not committing crimes. There's all kind of ways that you would look at the data and scrutinize the data before actually coming to a conclusion. But that is a study that has happened. It just hasn't been repeated that I know of, and I'll get more information on it. But there are things, if we want to connect the science and the spirituality, then the next step is testing. So that's where we always hit the barrier, because we always look at science. We use the word science very loosely. Like, we have a tendency to say, well, science is just knowledge, or science is just theory, or science is just such and such. And then we bring something into a scientific space, and then we hit the theory and we hit the hypothesis and the theory. But then right after that comes the testing, and we get stuck at the testing. And that's where the disagreements come in. But there is no disagreement in the method. So if you can't go past the testing, or you can't produce results with the testing, then it stays inconclusive, because the first test is just a test, is to actually come up with new hypotheses. by the end of that method, and the scientific method, by the end of that method, you generally aren't even testing the initial thing that you were that your hypothesis was on, because your hypothesis should change and your theory should change even a little bit in relation to the results of the testing that you've gotten by testing the theory. And the results that you get from testing the theory, then you make new theories and hypotheses based on that. So by the time you get to the end of the scientific method and I test the theory and I come to my conclusion, then peer review is also in there. And I don't mean just scholastic academic peer review. I mean, if we're all scientists and everybody in here has different equipment and I send my results out to each and every one of you, then each and every one of you test it with equipment that I may not even have, and knowledge in math that my math may not be as good as Cosmic's. My general relativity may not be as good as Nappa's, and my string theory may not be as good as God energy. So everybody comes together in order to make a scientific conclusion on that for something that we can functionally implement in the world, like turning our lights on without electrocuting ourselves, or walking across a bridge even without it collapsing, or sitting in a house without it falling down on you. So that's the point of the scientific method. If we need to prove some things, then they can be tested, but they would take testing.
All right. Are you finished, Fusion?
Yeah, I'm finished.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, God Energy.
Peace, y'all. So I do like the idea of putting certain claims associated with spirituality to some sort of test, right? We know the government has studied and worked with people with psychic abilities and things like that. Multiple studies, projects done at universities. But at the origin of it, we have to look at where this started from and how we got here, right? Because the same way in linguistics that Elo and Allah, right, are cognates, meaning they have a common origin. Metaphorically, science and spirituality are cognates, right? They have a common origin. They started off together. That's why we're having this conversation about spirituality being used in the place of science, right? But the reason why we're even having this conversation is because spirituality and science have this very special relationship with each other. And it's because of their common ancestry, right? The things we associate with spirituality are some of the ancient earthworks, right? Like Stonehenge, Nabta Playa. And we associate these as monumental sites that had some sort of spiritual significance. But when they're studied, they're shown to have, astronomical significance, being almost like calendars, right? So the observation of the changing of the seasons, which is very important when you're hunting and gathering things that change with the season, right? The codifying of this observation of astronomy around them becomes encoded in something translated as spiritual, right? And so they come together in that aspect, having that common origin. Another connection would be the Ashengo bone, right? Where they say it's the first instance of mathematics. You got prime evidence of prime numbers, multiplication, addition, base set of 10, base set of 12. But arbitrarily, it's topped with a quartz crystal, right? Well, what would that have to do with, the numbers that are just etched on the bone? So you have this abstract thought of the crystal being added to this mathematical instrument, right? And it happens to be on a baboon bone. Interestingly enough, right, thousands of years later down the line, you see a culture with a deity that's represented by a baboon, and it happens to be a deity associated with mathematics, right? That later civilization is Kemet. So you see this continuity of the scientific and spiritual concept even maintained through thousands of years within this landmass, right? The baboon being associated with mathematics, adding that spiritual abstract thought to the very real science of mathematics. And, the study of cosmogony, that we have, right? Which is the study of the origin of the universe. That's what all of these ancient mythologies also are. They are literally cosmogonies, told through the actions of their creator God. But they are still participating in the same scientific act of theorizing the origin